Hi there. Have you ever tried talking to someone whose reaction was not welcoming at all? Maybe you even asked the person, "Can we talk?" And they were staring at their phone, and whilst you talking or you asking questions, they didn't mind you or they seemed not bothered at all. And when you ask the person, "Are you fine? Are you okay?" They say they are fine. Meanwhile, you could see that something is wrong, everything is not okay, but they keep saying they are fine. Minutes may pass, it may be hours, it may be even days, and they are just silent, not talking to you and not giving you any reason. Well, whereas there can be many reasons to this experience, one of the main reason is called stonewalling. Welcome to the Streams of Emotions. My name is Moses. You can call me Mo for short, and I'm really glad you are here with me again. In this podcast, remember, we learn, we listen, and we lessen the load of emotions. If this is your first time, then I want to tell you, you are in a good place. This is episode 20, and we're going to talk about stonewalling when silence becomes a wall. With what I started earlier, sometimes when you ask people if they are okay and they don't give you any reason, and especially if they are your partners or they are your friend, sometimes you end up asking yourself a lot of questions. And that is one of the effects of stonewalling. When you talk about stonewalling, what is it at all? Well, from episodes 17, 18, and 19, we've been discussing the four horsemen of Dr. John Gottman. And we have looked at contempt, we have looked at defensiveness, we have looked at criticism, and today we're looking at the last one, which is stonewalling. You can check out the previous episode to find out more about these horsemen. So when you talk about stonewalling happens when people withdraw emotionally from someone, or when people become a bit unresponsive and they stop talking. You are talking to them, they don't seem to be minding you. Sometimes they end up giving you straight answers or just one way answers. Sometimes they pretend to be busy, occupying themselves with a lot of activities because they want to avoid conversation. Some people also try to avoid eye contact. So when some people are trying to close themselves up emotionally, they try to avoid eye contact. Someone that you used to talk to them face to face, they just try to avoid all those kind of conversations. Sometimes they ignore messages. And the bottom line is this: they shut down emotionally. It is called stonewalling because it feels like talking to a wall. And when you talk to a wall, it hits the wall and gets back to you. There isn't any flow, there isn't any flare, and it becomes a barrier. I've come to realize that sometimes the loudest message in a relationship is not spoken through words, it's rather spoken through silence. Wait a minute, I will explain that. The things that we don't say sometimes may mean a lot than the things we say. Silence is not always silence. No, sometimes silence is open up to a lot of things. So generally we think when people are silent it's a sign of rejection. Yes, sometimes they are just rejecting you, the relationship they want to have with you. Yeah, that is silence. But silence to the person who is silent may mean that they are overwhelmed or they don't know what to say. Sometimes people just want to avoid confrontation or they don't want to fight. You be with someone and say, "Oh, I don't want to fight with you." So instead of that, they choose silence over having a conversation that they think may lead to a fight. And sometimes some people are just emotionally exhausted. Maybe they have so many things on their mind, and so they are unable to open up to others. Sometimes some people just need a moment to think, and that is why people can be silent. There are so many reasons. And this is basically referred to as psychological or emotional flooding. That is how John Gottman refers to this: psychological or emotional flooding. And psychological emotional flooding is when your emotions become so intense that your brain and your body goes to a survival mode. And what this does is that your brain is unable to think really accurately, and your body also want to isolate itself. So it goes on a survival mode. Yes. Let's say that you're having a conversation or you're in a meeting with your employee and the person disgrace you, disrespect you, or say something to criticize you to make you feel bad. At that instant, maybe during the meeting, you may not talk as you should, or you may not even think well as you should. You may end up ruminating on what has been said to you, and that can gradually build silence, which leads to what? Stonewalling. And even with children, sometimes a parent may ask a child to talk about something. Maybe they broke the household rule and the child feels bad about it. The parents may want the child to talk about it, but they're unwilling to talk about it because they are flooded by what they have done sometimes. Yeah, so all this can bring silence that will eventually lead to what? Stone walling. So when people are silent, to the one who is affected, not the one silent, but the one who is observed or who is there with a silent person, they may think that, oh, the individual is not interested in what they are saying, or they may think that the individual has concluded that they are not worth listening to, or they don't care about the situation. But considering what I've mentioned earlier, you realize that it's not always the case. Sometimes people are going through a lot of problem themselves. And what silence does is that the one who is at the receiving end, it opens the person up to a lot of interpretation. From the scenario I cited earlier, when someone is silent, you may ask yourself, "What have I done wrong, or what is it?" And you start having all sort of ideas or negative vibe and those kind of things. But it might not necessarily be so. It might just be the person who need a space to deal with themselves. And I just want to add up a little of some research that happened, especially during the COVID-19. You know, COVID created the opportunity for a lot of people to be with their spouses. So those that were working, they all stayed in the room and they were being with their spouses. And most of them, research shows that a lot of the people had a lot of argument during the time that they were living together in the same house with their spouses. That work was to be done from home. And what this did is that it ended up causing a lot of people to be silent. So instead of them opening up to have conversation, they would just wanted to avoid a difficult conversation. They want to feel comfortable. So they just decided to ignore all forms of argument. And yes, that was good. But is it the best way to resolve conflict? You see, when you are silent, you reduce immediate argument, but you increase long term distance. I want to repeat it. When you are silent, you reduce immediate argument, but you increase long term distance. In episode 6, I talked about how our silence can bridge a wall between our loved one. You can check out episode 6. So, this is how silence gradually becomes stonewalling. The more you try to avoid difficult conversation or argument, the more you tell your brain that, oh, this is okay. So, when sometimes some of these things happen, your quick response is to avoid difficult conversations. And the more you're avoiding the difficult conversation, it becomes easier for you to avoid and it start building wall over and over again. Have you ever found yourself saying that it's easier not to talk about it? Maybe it's because you are stonewalling. This episode is actually for you. Yeah, so the issue with stonewalling is that it doesn't help relationship at all. But the encouraging news is that it's still possible to overcome stonewalling. So when you become emotionally flooded or you don't want to talk to someone for a while, it's okay. Sometimes we'll be in that position, we don't feel like talking. Sometimes we ourselves, we don't know why we don't want to talk. It's okay. But first, take a break if there is a need for conversation. But before you take the break, announce it. Let a person know that I want to take a break for, let's say, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or for some time, and I'll get back to you. So there are three things. One, take a break, but before then, announce it. And three is that return to the conversation after the break. This is very important. And during the break, there will be the temptation for you to rehearse on what has happened or the negative thing that is going on wrong. But this isn't a good habit at all. Just calm yourself down. And me being a Christian, I always add a God factor that may God help me deal with whatever that is going through. And may God lead me to something that can bring me up or help me have a better perspective. And it works well for me I don't know about you, but you can try as well. Then, after a period of time, just as I mentioned, come back to the conversation. I want to emphasize this that stonewalling does not happen only in marriages. Sometimes parents stop talking to their children after disappointment, and this builds stonewalling. Sometimes friends also ignore messages rather than addressing misunderstandings. Sometimes siblings may even go months without speaking because no one wants to have that difficult conversation. Even in an organization, when difficult conversations are not addressed in organization, it gradually creates a distance between people. Wherever silence exists, it's easier for Stonewall to persist. In all, what I'm saying is this: when silence becomes a wall, love cannot pass through. But when silence becomes a pause, understanding has a chance to make a difference. And I want you to know that every wall begins with a brick. However, every repaired relationship begins with one conversation at a time. Let us all help to avoid stonewalling because it may seem helpful in the early stages, but at the end, it doesn't help any relationship. Thank you for joining me on Streams of Emotions. If this episode helped you understand yourself or someone you love little better, then I want you to share it with someone who may need it. Until next time, keep learning about your emotion, listening to them, and together let's lessen the load of emotions. Have a wonderful time.